This is a HeadGum podcast.
Hello. This is Fake the Nation, where we talk about culture, we talk about news, and where we congratulate one and all for possibly paying their taxes. I'm your host, Negin Farsad. And if there's ever a year where you felt like you were paying your taxes into a Doge void, it's now. First, they were going to cut $2 trillion at Doge, and then they were revised it to $1 trillion, and now they revised it to $150 billion. So I don't know. I think you should be allowed to round down on your taxes. You know what I mean? And let's think of it more as an aspirational number. It doesn't have to be the actual number. Also, they fired a bunch of people at the IRS. So who's looking and paying attention? It's unclear. Today, we're not going to talk about that because we'll have to see what the fallout is from everyone theoretically having paid their taxes. But instead, we're going to talk about how Hobby Lobby takes Manhattan, how Blue Origin has girl power, and I guess how El Salvador is our new best friend. We'll also look at Harvard's response to the administration, and finally, we'll look at the comfort class and ask why they control everything. And, oh my gosh, today's panel, what an excellent panel we have. For the very first time, this gentleman is joining us. He's co-host of the podcast Part-Time Genius, and he has a podcast company called Kaleidoscope, and he's done so much in the audio and media world. It is sort of, I could go on for very many more lines of bio, but instead I will introduce him. It is the incredible Mangesh Hattikudur. Hey, Mangesh.
Hi, it's nice to be here, Negin.
We also have, you've heard her on the show before, you love her, she's a writer. She's also most notably a communications consultant and a ghostwriter. This woman has all of the skills. It is the excellent Sally Kohn. Hey, Sally.
Oh my gosh. I love when you guys call. It's like, we can't get anybody. Oh, let's get Sally. Fine.
No, you're a regular on the show. You get the call because we love having you. We regularly call.
They're all like, they flipped to next time old. So this is my reference. I'm all, nope, not available. All right.
No, I know. And it turns out Mangesh can only speak for one person himself. So then that was also an issue. I'm kidding. We love Sally. All right, folks, let's get into it with topic number one. Okay, so this is not a national story, and yet I find it fascinating. So let's talk about it. But Hobby Lobby, known for its arts and crafts and its evangelical positions, is opening a store in Manhattan. Now, you might remember Hobby Lobby. The Hobby Lobby case that went to the Supreme Court ruled that corporations are like people that hold religious beliefs, and they don't have to provide, for example, contraception to their employees or to coverage for contraception because it's against their religion as a corporation, and that corporation's like a person. So they are opening a store in Tribeca and in Manhattan, and I think it's an interesting place to open a store. Interesting enough that there's been news coverage of it. But I don't know, like Sally, and presumably enjoy New York City. What do you think of this development, this little cultural development?
I thought you were going to say I know and enjoy crafting. And you know what, Negin? You are correct. You are correct.
Are you a crafter? So have you been in a Hobby Lobby?
Are we allowed to curse? I can't remember.
Yes.
Oh, fuck yeah, I curse. Okay. I craft. Fuck yeah. I mean, I got
hardcore crafter.
Oh yeah, like name a craft. It'd be easier to name the crafts I don't do. No. Like I begged my family for a bedazzler for Christmas. I did. I'm like, anybody have anything I can bedazzle? Like, watch out. I'm just all over the place.
Oh my God. Okay.
I hardcore love a craft store. And so I gotta be honest, this is why, like, going way back, the whole Hobby Lobby thing upset me. Cause I was like, look, I don't want my, embroidery floss to come with a side of right-wing hatred. And it doesn't seem necessary. It seems, I guess it's a sad commentary. Okay, you want like a real political analysis? It is a sad commentary that their business must be doing well enough in the era of Trump, that they can not only audaciously move into one of the most liberal cities in the world, but side note, like the most expensive real estate in Manhattan, in Tribeca.
Yeah.
And is it like a nose thumbing? Is it like a whatever? I of course hope they horrifically fail. So there you go. I don't know.
Yeah, because
I like
there's also
Marshalls. Or not a
there's
Marshalls.
a Michaels.
Michaels. Also do like a Marshalls. So usually they're next to each other.
They
So
usually are next to each other. Yeah, there was a Manhattan location in which I believe they were like across the street from each other.
Wait, there's also a Brooklyn one, which is like the fourth ring of hell. That Michaels is a friggin' underground dump, and I will still go there before I'll go to that new Hobby Lobby.
Mangesh, have you been to a Hobby Lobby?
I have never been to a Hobby Lobby, but my 10-year-old and I have a Tuesday night art club. And
Cute.
so
What does
we
that
definitely
mean? What does that mean?
it means that we weren't hanging out enough, and so or not hanging out enough without screens, and so we decided to have a Tuesday night art club where we really, things are so much better when they're called clubs. I feel like.
Yeah, no, that's actually brilliant. This makes me want to do an art club with my daughter.
And so sometimes we have, like, I have a friend who's a cartoonist, and he comes over as a special guest, or we have my kid also makes mocktails, and so it makes a special mocktail for the event.
Sure.
And so I've definitely been to Michael's. I've not been to a Hobby Lobby. I've also been to like Blix and like other like art stores,
Real
in
art
New York.
stores, yeah.
But I think the crazy thing for me about this is that like there's always such joy when something from like the suburbs comes to New York, right? Like like when
Yes,
Wegmans
there
came, it
is.
was like, oh my god,
Oh
Wegmans
my
is here. I can
gosh.
finally get like the groceries I couldn't get before or something. And people go crazy for it. And similarly, like
Yeah.
even when like Chick-fil-A, which has like some similar issues as Hobby Lobby, I'd say, and we had lived in Atlanta. There had been a lot of people who had protested by not going to Chick-fil-A for quite a while, right? Like when Chick-fil-A came to Midtown, like there were lines around the block for it. There were guards in front. There was like a velvet line or rope. It was like stunning, but somehow I don't feel like Hobby Lobby has that same attraction in a way. I mean, like there are craft places, there are art places. To me, it really feels like if Hobby Lobby went to Staten Island, it wouldn't be anything to be in
Well,
the news.
there is a Hobby Lobby in
Right.
Staten Island, yeah. And it's funny because a lot of these things already exist, in Staten Island. And Staten Island is so like a suburb of, New
Completely.
York. It's like that. It's like an odd thing that it is. And so there's no news when these things open in Staten Island. And the interesting thing, I think the Chick-fil-A sort of national uproar happened because of Prop 8. Am I right? It was like at a time when they were putting money into Prop 8. And so it got there, and I guess I'm lucky and that I'm just not around these. I wasn't around a Chick-fil-A. I didn't understand what the hubbub was as I hadn't tried it. And I just had a sense that it was probably not as delicious as like me, violating my ethics. That said,
it's neck and neck. It's hard. There are a lot of people who found
friggin' tasty.
now I
Like there's
performed.
other fried chicken. I'm just
There's
saying.
other fried chicken.
Yeah.
So I performed around the country, and then so I didn't go to Chick-fil-A for years. And then I finally was like, okay, I don't know. I'm just going to try it and and hopefully it's fine. And I tried it and I stand by my previous assertion, which does not taste better than my ethics feel. So it's just I would venture to say it's an average fucking chicken sandwich, guys. There, I said it. I don't know. There's some Chick-fil-A stands out there listening to the show who are like shaking their heads. But I don't see the big appeal. Now with Hobby Lobby, I've also never been inside one. I'm not an avid crafter, so this is not going to be surprising. I've been inside a Michael's, and I'm now with a daughter because I have a daughter. I should probably also do an art club. I do find the need more to like go buy crafty things and do them with her. So my question, I guess, so we know Sally is not going to go to this Hobby Lobby. Mangesh, would you go to this Hobby Lobby if it was so conveniently located near you?
No, but I have we had an issue with Target when they
Mm.
immediately decided to like cancel their DEI stuff,
Oh, yeah.
and for a company that was so progressive and hired so many of my gay friends from like who'd gone to business school, etc., it feels like a really strange position to take. And so that was much harder for me than like Hobby Lobby, because if your kid falls sick and you need medicine, and it's around the corner, it's hard to
To
avoid.
like knock right, because it's more of an all service kind of place.
Yeah.
All right, folks, I don't know, what do you think? Are you the kind, and I'm not, I generally think I would always just ask the question, is this place better than what my personal ethics feel like?
Yeah, no, that's right.
And then just do that.
Great
Yeah, like for a lot of things, right? And also, I also like recognize I live in a world where like I have to have sponsors. I have to do all
No
sorts of
shit.
things, right? That like, that, I mean, in a perfect world, I could just do everything for free and then I wouldn't have to worry about any of it. But that is not the world
And
any
money
of
would be
us
free.
live in. Yeah.
I have this battle, not to segue to your next topic, but I have this battle with Amazon a lot now that I live in the country, and like it's hard to get stuff. And
Stuff.
even if you got, I mean, it's a pure like hard to get stuff. And so, and by the way, you're choosing between multinationals, so it's like, right? I mean,
Yes.
there are some things you can get from local businesses. I still use local bookstores and so forth. But like if I need, I don't know,
Right.
screws, right?
Right.
Yes, I'm going to my local hardware. But it's like there's a certain universe of things where you're like, well, am I getting it at Target? Am I getting it at Lowe's? Am I getting it from Amazon? Like, I don't like any of those choices necessarily.
Yeah.
And you try to minimize your consumption overall, and you try to minimize your reliance on. But it's wild. You can even try to buy from a small business now. I've had this problem, and it gets fulfilled by Amazon. You're like, "Ugh."
What? I know.
Oh
I've
yeah,
had that.
that's the
Yeah.
thing.
I've had that too.
So
There's no getting around the Amazon stuff, right? They've got
Yeah.
the web services. Anytime you one click on anything, they get a royalty for it, whether it's on their site or not. I mean, it's like unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
it's
Oh, well, speaking of Amazon, the
see,
Blue
help you there.
Origin,
So smooth.
so smooth.
So smooth.
The Blue Origin spaceship took off on Monday. It is a Jeff Bezos
Penis.
the spacecraft, and it took off with a star-studded cast. There has been pushback. Oh, let's see. There was Katy Perry was on there, Gail King, obviously Lauren Sanchez, Jeff Bezos' partner, and then there was a couple of just some regular people.
There were scientists. There were scientists.
There's like a civil rights activist and I believe a writer and yes, and then someone who actually is knows something about space flight. So what do you think, Sally? What did you think of this flight? There's been pushback, so I'm just curious where you stand on this on a scale of none to pushback.
Oh, I'm over here in pushback land.
Okay.
Look, in general, let's just start with the fact that, Abigail Disney, who's one of the Disney heirs, has said that there's no argument for anyone to have more than $999 million. Once you have $1 billion, it basically, you keep making money whether you spend it or not. There's just, if you can't live off $999 million, what the fuck is wrong with you? And so when you talk about people having so much fucking wealth, so much extreme wealth, and by the way, wealth that, yes, Amazon, great idea, great initiative, but there's also the amount that the profit went up during the pandemic, and the workers can't have bathroom breaks, and breaking unions and paying shitty wages and sort of all of that. Not to mention all the money that's coming from the government that's going toward them and not paying taxes and all of that, right? When you have so much extra friggin' money that you're like, hey, let's build private space rockets and try to colonize Mars. And by the way, also privatize the space program. So you've got relatedly Elon Musk saying, oh, let's cut government, including like government research and NASA and blah, blah, blah. But like, let's privatize space so that we then have to get paid to do space stuff. Like, it's fucking nuts. It is like oligarchy on crack. So, it's the extremities of inequality and wealth inequality in this moment are greater than the robber barons could have ever dreamed of. And so in that moment, to have a stunt that they had the audacity to try to paint as feminism, right? Of like, you get to be, very, very wealthy, privileged people going on a teeny little tiny space trip on a private penis-shaped rocket that is part and parcel of defunding government, cutting government science, and privatizing everything in our country is just, made my skin crawl. Made my skin crawl.
Yeah, I mean, I should say, okay, so here's my question, Mangesh. The another Blue Origin flight went with William Shatner, and Wally Funk, and Jeff Bezos himself, and I believe his brother was also on that flight, maybe. Now I guess there was, I don't quite remember, but I imagine there was similar pushback, although there wasn't, obviously this one was being sold with a feminist angle. What do you think? Are we treating these flights differently because of the ladies on board?
Yeah, and I think they should be. I mean, like when you're trying to paint something with as okay because of feminism, or like masking it in that, it's really it's egregious. And part of the reason is, like, I mean, I did like a quick search on Blue Origin's maternity policy, and it's like 6 weeks that they get paid, like paid leave, or 8 weeks of paid leave, something like that. And it's like, I mean, if you were combining it with like any sort of like initiative, money towards like STEM, like these things, like you could have used this for real feminism and real inspiration and real, but instead it's just like this way of making a rocket program seem okay, like a personal rocket program. And to Sally's point, like there's that old like Lorne Michaels line about cocaine is God's way of telling you have too much money. It feels like space programs are God's way of telling you have too much money, right? Like it feels like every person who reaches a certain level of wealth has to have their own like rocket, and it doesn't make any sense.
Part of me feels like, look, if you weren't angry at the guys going into space, you shouldn't be angry at the girls going into space. But they did set it up as a feminist mission, so we're also like now judging it on that metric. And part of me is like, who cares? It's fine. And then part of me is like, yes, the entire existence of it is a symbol of such dramatic inequality, and a symbol of such problems, that we've allowed this inequality to fester to the point where people have their own spaceships.
There's also a different moment, right, that Bezos exists in now than he did during those previous flights, right? So he's become a much more political figure, right? So he owns the Washington Post. He changed the contours of the coverage of the Washington Post and said they would only be, posting opinion pieces in their paper that were consistent with a free market freedom narrative, right? And stop doing endorsements and et cetera, right? He obviously very, very, very much cozied up to Trump. And of course, it's very hard when you're thinking about private spaceflight to disentangle Bezos from Elon Musk. So there's that, right? It's such a different moment. He's a different figure. It has different meaning right now. And then cast all of that in the fact that we're talking about how there's not enough money for like research on how to cure cancer in children, or to like help get AIDS medicine to people in Africa, but we do have enough money to do this. And they'll say, well, it's their private money. Again, they're not paying the same taxes that those of us who just filed our taxes yesterday paid. So the whole thing is so fakakta And I think the scrutiny is more about this moment, about Bezos and what he represents, about this runaway inequality as life is getting harder and harder and harder for Americans and for people around the world.
But also,
But
like, what are we supposed to be cheering? Like that billionaires will have an escape hatch when when the Earth gets worse. It's
also, again, just in terms of like going to Mars and Elon Musk, you still can't breathe on Mars. And so there's no amount of escape hatch that is a real escape hatch. You know what I mean? Unless there's breathing on these other planets, it's just not a solution,
But there is like a cabal of these sort of tech libertarian, whatever the hell you want to call them, who are pushing for legislation to be able to create corporate states that are free from government, whether they exist within the borders of a nation or they're on Mars or they're in the ocean, right? Like this idea that if you get wealthy enough, you can just opt out of society. This is a real policy platform that they're pushing. And I do just want to say one other thing, which is the thing that bothered me the most about the space flight was Gail King being on it. I think
because
that
you
Gail
respect her.
King, well, I respect all the people on the plane or the thing.
Yeah, I mean, her work.
But she is a journalist.
Yeah.
Right? She is a journalist. And in this moment, I would have thought that she would have had pause about letting herself be used as a pawn for oligarchy
as like
and
a publicity prop.
and
Yeah.
I just thought,
right,
especially when journalists have a credibility problem right now.
Right. And I also wonder if someone came to me, what would I do? Like, I have like kind of literally zero interest in going into space. So that's my, I maybe I wouldn't be. It was my Chick-fil-A. I don't care about going.
What are you interested in? So far, we've learned on this show that Negin doesn't want to do jack shit. She doesn't want to crash.
chicken.
She doesn't want to eat chicken. She doesn't want to go to space.
Oh my God! I'm such a like two-dimensional nothing. All right, folks, we got to move on. We're going to take a quick break so we can learn from our sponsors, and then we will come back with more show. And we are back, and we're ready for topic number 2. This one. The case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was mistakenly sent to an El Salvadorian mega prison, is exactly the shitty thing we were all worried about. Various people affiliated with the White House admitted that it was a mistake. The Trump administration was told to bring him back by a judge. The Supreme Court agreed, but the language was maybe a little left to interpretation. Could sound like, try your very best to bring him back. And they were like, we tried and we couldn't. So that's the end. And then last night, as I was reading about all of this, a judge, scolded the government for doing nothing to return Abrego Garcia. Stephen Miller claimed that the Supreme Court, which ruled that the White House had to get him back, Stephen Miller was like, no, the Supreme Court said the opposite. Basically, Stephen Miller just read the same decision we all read, and then read it as the opposite of that. And so this is it's a head scratcher. It's also a head exploder. Now, I don't know, Mangesh, tell us, where do you stand on all of this? I'm sure you're very pro.
I mean, it's all so awful. I cringe every time Stephen Miller says anything, and I feel like I went to Duke, and I feel like
that guy in White Lotus.
I know, and we've released so many awful people. The guy from White Lotus, like Stephen Miller. What's the other white supremacist?
I mean, there were a lot from Duke, but go on.
Oh yeah, that one white.
Right? The one. And, Aileen Cannon, the judge.
David Duke.
David Duke
too. He did good to the university in a sense.
It is rough. But I mean, I feel like Stephen Miller reads everything wrong and just defiantly, but it is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see what's happening in terms of all of these deportations, and in this case especially, where someone who shouldn't have been deported, and I feel like this was predicted, right? Like that, people had said that the Trump administration is going to make mistakes on purpose, and then fight them in the courts to allow more and basically injustice to occur. I mean, I also find it really hard with all the like students who had so many choices to go to other countries and chose on purpose to come to the US because of like the freedom to speak, the freedom to to express yourself, to like there are so many, all of that attraction to coming to the US and all of that goodwill is so quickly being erased, and it's really hard to watch.
Sally.
First of all, I mean, yeah, look, Stephen Miller friggin' knows they lost the case, but it's a real commentary, right, on the moment we're in which they're like, well, you know what, we can declare that we won the Supreme Court case 9-0, and like half the country will believe that, so and it's just the it sort of goes to show, right? And it's kind of related to the initial government lawyer was like, oh, we made a mistake, we shouldn't have sent him, and then that guy got put on leave, and they were like, no, we're gonna defend this. So it's this like they realize that they have complete and total unchecked power and can do whatever the fuck they want. And what is disorienting to those of us who've read the Constitution is that you're supposed to have these three co-equal branches. In fact, the legislature is supposed to be slightly more powerful in that check and balance process. But if you have a Republican Party that is refusing to check and balance, it's sort of stunning, right? There is no enforcement mechanism, right? If you think about our almost 250-year history, why do courts, right, work? Especially when it comes to government and the powerful, right? I mean, I break the law, the police could come after me, and right, but that's because there is an executive, a mayor, a governor, a president who said, yes, please, police, please, federal marshals, enforce that ruling. When you have a executive that says, nah, no, we're not going to do it, and then you don't have a legislator that holds them accountable, it's truly, it is head exploding. It blows our minds. And by the way, it's awful enough already, even without Trump having made multiple signals saying, the wrong people, wrong time, wrong things. He considered doing the exact same to American citizens. And when you read the actual logic that the Trump administration lawyers are deploying in this particular case, there is nothing that would stop them from doing it to citizens as well. It's
I have to say, and I wonder what you guys think, but I was just telling Andrew that like in the last few weeks, the question that I've gotten very many times, a surprising number of times, is, am I, Negin Farsad, going to change anything about my social media presence or whatever? Am I afraid of like getting picked up? And it's funny because I've not registered that fear for myself in that way. I mean, I've also been in the crosshairs of right-wing media before. I've already gotten death threats and stuff like that. So I've already I'm sort of desensitized a little bit to this kind of, I don't know, these feelings or whatever of fear, I guess. But I also think it's like the cat's out of the bag. I've written so much against this, in op-eds. I have a column. You don't even need to look at my social media. You can look at any Google search and it'll be very clear, like what my deal is, you know?
Maybe right now you should just take a moment and give like 5 or 6 sentences of
Right. That could
praise to
be,
the Trump
yeah,
administration that your lawyer could read
yeah,
in
yeah,
court.
yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah.
as like a little
Yeah,
insurance
no,
policy, you know what I
that's not a
mean?
terrible idea. But I don't know. I just not, so I wonder, I don't know, Megan, you also appear to be someone with a name that's hard to pronounce. Um, do you feel like, there's anything in your immediate presence? I mean, do you feel concerned at all?
uh, I do. I mean, I know that my the co-founder of Kaleidoscope wrote uh, a sort of critical piece in Airmail about Musk and Doge, and when he came back to the States, he deleted all his texts and stuff, and like that behavior is just it's terrifying that he was so nervous about that, and I think I'm not so nervous about it in terms of like my political speech, but I have a kid who's non-binary, and like some of the stuff, like I'm more worried about being separated from a kid than anything else, and like that really, like the sort of threats and the ways people have talked about gender affirmation and stuff like that is really scary to me. I mean, it's all scary. I'm not, saying parts of it are,
It's like a
but on my
You've
anxiety
created,
scale, like that is higher. Like
but
how
I
I
love
take care of
the
my
idea
kid.
of like a hierarchy of fears, and
yes.
just some, and
Yeah.
by the way, I have to say too that like I've heard some criticism about lawmakers talking about Social Security. Dude, I fucking want lawmakers because this particular thing is so scary, right? But I also want lawmakers to talk about social. I want there to be a sort of like Democrats have a czar of Social Security clapbacks, a czar of wrongful deportation clapbacks. There should be
Yeah.
room for us to all freak out because I worry. I have elderly parents. I don't want them to not get their Social Security checks or whatever. You know what I mean? There's elderly people in my family who really, really depend on it. I want them all to get it. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
I worry about them too. And I also, yes, do I have, friends of the family who are supposed to come back in on their green cards who are worried that they're not going to get back in to see their family, to see their children. Yes, it's a good chance they're not going to get back in. And so a lot of these things directly affect me. But I don't think anyone should feel bad about the thing that's worrying them the most. If that's Social Security, if that's, funding for their incredibly important research that they're doing, in the medical field, whatever it is, there's enough room for each of us to take an expert position on the worry. You know what I mean?
I don't know, Negin. I feel like the one asshole watching who, of all the things going on in the world, is the most outraged about the Hobby Lobby is driving
In Manhattan.
wrong. And I will also add,
yes,
I think, look, Senator Chris Van Hollen from Maryland, Democrat, saying he's going to, if the Trump administration is doing anything, he will go to El Salvador and take action himself, is exactly the kind of leadership we need. Trump
love
saying
that.
he can't
Love
do
that.
anything. It's like, you fucking kidding me? According to reports, they lifted a finger to bring Andrew Tate back to the United States. Like, lots of fingers. Like, apparently, Trump's special envoy Grinnell went to bat for it, and that's a country we aren't paying. We are paying El Salvador
And also
$6 million to do a job when they can send the guy back.
They can send him right back. Also, the president of El Salvador was like, I can't smuggle back a terrorist into the United States.
Dad.
What are you talking about? So apparently no one has the authority to do anything with the case of this one dad from Maryland. It's so fucking bananas.
I also feel like people don't understand what due process is and how important the idea that, you just shouldn't be able to be disappeared, right? You shouldn't be able to, whether you did, let's say you did commit a crime and this person has no criminal record. And, if the government does think he's a, member of a cartel or whatever, or a gang, they should be filing charges against him. But either way, right, the
Well,
idea that you're accused of something, and so you go to a court where there is a process where someone presents the evidence and you have a chance to refute it and say if that is true or not and present other evidence. That foundation, we talk about the whole foundation of our society, the life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, like all of those are just lofty ideals. What it actually means on paper, right? What our declaration and our constitution and all of our individual rights and freedoms, what they mean on paper is that you can't have your shit taken away. You can't have your life taken away without process, without the ability to fight the evidence, to fight the argument, to fight the government, to fight against that. And so the part here that I don't think we talk about enough, because honestly, we don't understand it because we take it for granted, is like the guy just got picked up and sent away.
Yeah.
There was no court that said, okay. There was no chance for his lawyers to say, no, he's never been to upstate New York. He's not a member of that gang. He just liked that
right.
basketball team or
None of
whatever.
that
Like, there's
happened.
nothing
None of that happened.
that should scare
And also
the
that the
Jesus
administration also admitted that there was an error in sending him. It's like this shouldn't even. I think the administration's digging in their heels, actually making it a bigger story. There's a case that if they had, if they were talking to the right people, it's like just quietly send him back. This was a mistake, and like let's not make it a big deal because this is giving ammunition to the left to
They
galvanize.
want to scare us.
Well, they want to scare us, but also, which I think just the mega prison alone was scary. But they also, it feels like not only are they scaring us, but they're also, I think, moving us into action, which is, evidenced by the April 5th demonstrations, which is evidenced by the loss of the Supreme Court seat that they experienced in Wisconsin. So there's dare I say, good that could come out of this fear. All right, let's move on to this next thing, which is that the White House...
Smooth segue, Negin.
The White House is basically trying to control how Harvard does business. And instead, sorry, I just got a phone call for some reason on my fucking
God,
computer.
is it the government?
And it's the government, you guys. They're making demands on this podcast. So basically, the White House is trying to control how Harvard does its business, and Harvard said to the government, no. So hours later, the White House announced that they would freeze $2.2 billion in multi-year grant funding and $60 million in contracts to Harvard. It's a principled stance. It was met with harsh consequences. Mangesh, what do you think of Harvard's stance?
I mean, I was thrilled that someone's standing up, right? Like, and of course, Harvard with their enormous endowment is someone who can stomach losing billions of dollars or whatever in aid, but it's terrifying. Like for me, having seen some of this happen in India with Modi and going after after the press, after anyone who has done studying politics that was oppositional, anything that felt like it was in opposition, whether it really was or wasn't, was basically shut down. And I feel like that eradication of other dissenting thought is something, and this show of power is something you see around the world. And the fact that they're coming after educational institutes is again just so sad and so scary. But it was heartening to see not only Harvard stand up, but I think the two main lawyers who are defending Harvard are are very conservative and have defended Trump allies and stuff in the past. So it's interesting who will come to this fight.
I should point out, like, I read an op-ed by M. Gesson, who said that one of the things that universities can do is abandon all of their concerns, which is to say their rankings, their donors, their campus amenities, and distract themselves only and concern themselves only with, quote, the production and dissemination of knowledge. And Gesson pointed out in the late 70s and 80s, Polish dissidents opened up these flying universities that were operated out of apartments around the country, and that's how intellectuals disseminated information. You know, it was free to learn in these random apartments, and that's how they built a post-communist democracy that so far has withstood the test of time. What do you think now? Do you feel like Harvard is taking a little page out of that book, Sally?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Harvard is a fundamentally radical institution, just so we're clear. So I'm not just going to look like that.
Oh, they're not the apartments in Poland?
What I do think is that people of good conscience who have not been brainwashed should be surprised, number one, that, you have a government that is trying to control, right? You talk about small government and get government out of people's lives and whatever. This is a government trying to dictate how universities operate and what universities teach, flat out. And let me also say, I just take privilege as a second as a Jew here, that the fact that the Trump administration is so extraordinarily disingenuously using the fight against anti-Semitism as its fig leaf to do all of this is absolutely ridiculous and insulting, right? We should be fighting anti-Semitism, not weaponizing it. And obviously, I know you both know, but just for the benefit of the two people listening who don't, one can be anti-Semitism and oppose the war in Gaza. I know because I do, and lots of other people do too. And
so many.
It's so outrageous and insulting, and again, just clearly a facade. The other thing that worries me about this general trend, not to freak us out anymore, but right, is like this idea that you can use government funding to condition certain behaviors you want, which is what they're doing.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's not even like, oh, okay, Harvard doesn't want the funding, like, so fine. Then Trump's now like tweeting that maybe he'll take away their nonprofit status. So it's a do it or else, right? It's not a, you don't want the funding, fine, have a nice life, right? There's a real like willingness to keep going after them. We were talking earlier about Social Security. Again, if you're employing this logic, what is to stop the government from saying, you know what, we don't like, Grandma, that you went to that protest. You don't get your Social Security. Or stop, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, we won't give you your Social Security. It's the same right mechanism of conditioning funding. In this case, by the way, that like is also life-saving, right? We're talking about cancer research and in order to get the behaviors that they want. It's, again, well, I don't know. I'm going to call it what it is. Fascism. This is fascism. Here we are. They're doing it.
Right. Yes. I mean, there's no...
Sorry, did I just freak you out more?
No. I mean, I think we're...
I'm really good at that.
No, I mean, there's... What I think also is important to recognize in these situations is, like, we talked about Colombia a couple of weeks ago, and Colombia sort of agreed to certain demands, which was a precondition for the government to then sort of come back to the table and then impose more demands. Lee Bollinger, who was the president of Colombia for over 2 decades, who was also president while I was there, said something like, oh, it's clear now going into this Harvard mess, it's clear that even if you do agree to some demands, that the White House will never stop making demands. So now we know what the White House's MO is. And so it's like, it's not a like, I give some, you give some, and then we come to an agreement. That's not how it ends with this White House. So you can basically never give an inch, because then they'll just take, and not just a mile, they'll take 2 and 3 and 4 miles, So I think it makes sense for universities to come together and to have a coordinated position that makes it difficult, for the government on many fronts. Mangesh, you were going to say?
Oh, I was going to say I was talking to my friend Will, who's the co-host of Part Time Genius and president of iHeart Podcasts, and he was saying he has a friend who is teaches gender studies at University of Alabama, and I was thinking, like, which universities are they not going to go after? Like, it feels like Alabama is one of the ones where, maybe you are safer in like some of these departments, but it's curious to see how, like, I was surprised that, like, they take what was like a billion or 900 million from Northwestern, right? Like that Columbia to me makes a lot of sense, right? Like, because it was like this very visible campus and became this lightning rod of protest, but and Harvard, like, as an institution, obviously, but I'm kind of surprised by, like, the ways they're pulling grants from, like, Johns Hopkins and places that it doesn't feel from the outset that, like, there's the clearest agenda, but they're clearly, like, there's some rationale for going after all these universities.
Well, and also, I mean, I was at the University of South Alabama, and there was, like, concern about some of the climate science funding and stuff like that. And they're literally doing work on, like, the Louisiana marsh and the habitat there. And I mean, so stuff that you would think, like, this feels unobjectionable. Like, this feels very much like Gulf of America. Let's help it. And yet they're pulling funding. I mean, and even just today, I mean, we have to wrap this up because also this entire episode is going long, but, like, but just even yesterday I was, reading reports that they're shutting down factories that were manufacturing facilities for EV car parts and batteries, and shutting them down merely because they were funded by the Inflation Reduction Act, even though the Trump administration campaigned on factory work in the United States. So here you go. Here's several multi-billion-dollar factories in red states that are now being paused or permanently shut down. So because of the funding, and then those companies, instead of saying, okay, we'll wait this out and we'll figure it out, we'll work with the Trump. Instead, no. For example, the one that's being shut down in Georgia, where they need votes, they decided to move those operations to an existing factory that's already in the United States, and one in China, and one in Mexico. So not only did we, like, lose jobs, we then did exactly the fucking opposite of the thing the campaign promised it would do. And there was money allocated to do it. It's wild. It's only because that money came from a Biden administration plan that they don't want it to go through. And because they don't believe in EVs, even though their head of fucking Department of Government Efficiency sells EVs. It is beyond anything that makes sense. Guys, this was not the happy episode that anyone wanted.
It would have been wrong if it was.
But it was like a tough week for, it's been a tough week for America, but that's not to say, okay, now what I would love for the people of Fake the Nation is to be able to follow you guys and all of the wonderful things that you do, things that are not going to make them sad, the way this episode did. Sally, where do they find you?
I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I don't really tweet anymore. I think I'm on that Blue Sky thing too.
Yeah.
At Sally Kohn, Kohn. It's mostly crafts these days. Crafts and angry political memes.
Yeah, Crafts for America. Where do they find you?
I feel like, Sally, you're gonna have to come to a Tuesday night art club when you're in New York now.
I was hoping I'd get invited.
Yeah, you can find me on wherever you get your podcasts. We've got I have
What was the
shows.
name of the show? One more time.
One is Part-Time Genius, and I also did a memoir about astrology and being Indian, and it's really fun and weird and great. So that's called Skyline Drive.
Oh my gosh, look at you. Okay, now, folks, you have your marching orders. Crafts from Sally, and astrology from Mangesh. Follow them and buy and listen and do all of the stuff. You know where to find me. I'm going to be in Chicago on April 24th doing Wait, Don't Tell Me. So if you happen to be in town, come see the show. It's a really great, fun live experience. Otherwise, I have other things coming out and stuff happening, and I will keep you posted about those. But I would really love to make a special thanks to everyone who makes this podcast a possibility. That's our wonderful, wonderful producer, Andrew McGuire. Thanks to everyone at HeadGum. Thanks to Gaby Alter for our theme music. And if you have any questions or concerns, you can email us at faithandnationpodcast@gmail.com. You can support the show at patreon.com/Negin Farsad. And otherwise, we'll be back in your earballs next week.
That was a HeadGum podcast.